Welcome into Pac-12 preview. Yes, we are back. I am back. Michael Caratanito here. Yes, at Diablo00. You see it. So every week during the week, I'm going to wear different Pac-12 schools, probably except for one. And I'm guessing by the look of this, you guys can tell which one. But yeah, Monday was a solid show. Again, just introducing it again. We'll be here Mondays and Fridays here on the Sideline Sports Network. So stoked that I could be here doing the show. Obviously, bringing Pac-12 football. I know I started after non-conference play. We did a lot of review of the first three games of the season for Pac-12 teams, and again, started out pretty well for the Pac-12. Tough the first week in the SEC, obviously with Utah and Oregon. Touched on that, but doing pretty good against the Big Ten. Washington and Washington State both. Winning big games. Washington beating Michigan State and Washington State going on the road to Camp Randall beating Wisconsin. So again, a lot of games to get to. Obviously, this week we start conference play, and it's an exciting time of the year. Obviously, out west, a lot of great rivalries in this conference. And yes, I know I said conference realignment, and we will get to that on a Monday. Again, with having guests, I reached out to certain guests, and they're going to be able to. Well, one's going to be able to join today for a preview, but I'll leave that as a tease. And I've just been reaching out to other guests, trying to go over schedules, coordinate schedules, and see what they can do. So again, gonna have more guests. I love the Pac-12, but besides me, so we go from there. But I will say this week in the Pac-12, the overview of games that we're going to get to, I will tell you real quick. And again, we'll focus on a lot. It's a huge week for the Pac-12. So UCLA, who's 3-0, again, maybe didn't have the toughest of non-conference schedules. Touched on that last week. That they played, pardon me. Yeah, UCLA. So it's one of those things where they're 3-0 and they're taking on 0-3 Colorado. And man, it's been tough for Carl Durrell in Boulder. So that's obviously one of the games we'll look at. Another big game, number 15 Oregon, 2-1. Obviously, they're only lost to number 1 Georgia, but number 15 Oregon takes on undefeated Washington State, who of course is not ranked, even though again they're out of conference schedule. They beat a Wisconsin team who again is ranked and on the road, but like I said, we'll get schedule gripes on a Monday, not on a Friday. And then Arizona 2-1 taking on 2-1 Cal, who literally is a Hail Mary juggle away against Notre Dame last week from possibly being 3-0, but both teams 2-1. Coach Jed Fish has Arizona, looking pretty good. And Shane DeLora, the quarterback, has been very, very, very good for the Wildcats. The next game, one of the huge games we'll look at, number 7 USC 3-0 taking on a 3-0 Oregon State team. So this is huge, obviously, in the Pac-12 for USC's hopes. Again, they're all the way up to number 7 being 3-0, and just very interesting to me. So Washington, who's 3-0 as well, but since they weren't ranked preseason, rankers always have to feel that they were right. They're at number 18. You can say their schedule, but they again, out of conference wise, have played very, very well. They take on 1-1 Stanford, and then 2-1 Utah heads here to Tempe, to the desert, to take on 1-2 Arizona State. With the coaching change, we talked about mutual parting of ways. That's how it was said, but it's one of those things where ASU moved on from Herm Edwards, and running backs coach Sean Aguano became the interim head coach, had a great press conference, and sent out a statement. So it'll be interesting to see what Sun Devil Stadium looks like at 7:30, 10:30 Eastern time, 7:30 on Saturday night. So those are the games that that we have coming up. And, you look at overall big week. Yes, everybody wants to get started off fast in conference play. I'll say this before we start looking at the games. Everybody wants to start off fast in conference play to get that win, especially if you can get the win at home. You go on the road and you get the win. You feel, to overstate the obvious, really good about it. I look at UCLA going to Colorado. Colorado's struggling. And they always say the phrase trap game. And to me, I don't believe in trap games, just due to the fact that coaches, they always say they're not looking past anybody. Yes, players on paper feel they should beat somebody, but I'm sorry, I just think as a competitor, as a coach, like, you're not overlooking anybody. But for UCLA going to Colorado, again, 0-3 Colorado, they took a bad loss against Minnesota at home during non-conference play, did the Buffs. So to me, it's just getting off to a fast start. For Utah, again, not really a trap game. ASU, again, you have a new coach. You're not going to change what you do in a week, basically, in 5 days. So to me, that's one thing when you look at it. ASU's, again, and some things will be a little bit different. The energy of practice, I can say, not that it was ever bad, but again, Coach Aguano, the practice we were able to come out to, media-wise, we were able to view, was very upbeat. So, and fast-paced. And he said, there was some maybe a little pushback, some players, but again, if they're in between the lines, they're running. So what will that look like against a obviously very good team like Utah? Kyle Whittingham, again, has done such a phenomenal job, such a solid coach, well-respected through the conference, throughout the country. But still, I mean, it's been a little bit of pseudo tough sledding for Utah in Tempe. And we'll get to that too. Like I said, Arizona opening up with Cal, very interesting, because Cal has played in a lot of close games the last few seasons under Justin Wilcox. And for Jed Fish to start conference playoff with a victory, it would be obviously be very huge for him. But for Cal and Justin Wilcox, you look at it and it's like, okay, they've played in close games. Yeah, they haven't gone their way. Example, Notre Dame last week, coming back, and again, that Hail Mary pass going back and forth. So you look at it, but for teams like Washington State, who's undefeated, Washington, who's undefeated, obviously USC, like I said, they're 3-0, taking on an undefeated Oregon State team. And the Beavers, it's one of those things where for Oregon State, that you can really send a huge message. And if they beat SC, of course, SC being in the Pac-12 will probably skyrocket down the top 25, even though they lose to an undefeated team. But that's neither here nor there for this show. So those are obviously the games we're going to get into. What is Stanford going to be? Obviously, quarterback play, very solid for the Cardinal. And for all these teams, I mean, Emory Jones at ASU, Cam Rising, I can't wait to see. Obviously, they don't defend each other, as we all know, but I can't wait to see that matchup. And Michael Penix Jr. For Washington, Caleb Williams, obviously, for SC. So Jaden Delore, I already mentioned him for Arizona. So again, and Bo Nix for Oregon. What's he going to do? So very interesting. We're going to get into those. Going to take a quick break, and we will be back with game previews here on Pac-12 football. All right, back here on Pac-12 football, obviously previewing the big games coming up. First off, let's start with the Oregon-Washington State game, because Oregon at 15, 2-1, like I said, their only loss is to Georgia. Washington State 3-0. They got a huge performance in Wisconsin to get that win and beat the Badgers, who, if you're a Washington State fan, by the way, I mean, it's always different connecting of the dots. You are definitely rooting for Wisconsin to beat Ohio State this week, because that would do nothing but obviously help you out, and I'm guessing get you into the top 25 if you beat Oregon as 15 and you would beat Wisconsin, turn around, beat Ohio State. Again, Pac-12 might not get rewarded as much, but hey, I'm not bitter. But when we look at this game for Oregon, the road team, they are up at the Palouse at Washington State. Kickoff is 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific time. But Oregon has had a lot of success at Washington State just in general. They're 13-6 when I was looking this game up, 13-6 since 1985. They've won the last 3 games in the series overall. And of course, like I said, looking to start 3-1 or better, start to 3-1 this year, but it would be for the 6th straight season. They started 3-1 or better. They scored 111 points the last 2 weeks after being held to 3 points, obviously against Georgia, the beatdown. Bo Nix came to Oregon, like I said, transfer in the transfer portal from Auburn, and he became the first quarterback since Marcus Mariota, check this out, in 2014 to have 3 rushing touchdowns and 2 passing touchdowns in the same game. Terrence Ferguson, they're only the second Oregon tight end in the last 25 seasons with back-to-back games with multiple reception touchdowns. Drake Breland back in 2019 did that same thing, and Oregon's one of 4 FBS schools this season to have not allowed a sack. So even the beatdown against Georgia, they didn't allow a sack. Good news for them. And again, Bo Nix, I think from that first game on, gotten a little better. And obviously, when you look at what Oregon did in non-conference play, to me, it's one of those things where, again, you have Georgia. Obviously, you take the beat down in a neutral site. I mean, Oregon travels, 3,500 miles to Atlanta. So not really crazy neutral site there. But if you're the Ducks, you put it behind you. Dan Lanning, obviously, head coach here in the Pac-12, defensive coordinator from Georgia. But it's going to be a tough matchup against Washington State. When you look at what Washington State has done, just the second Power 5 team since 1996 to start a season 3-0 with a road win over a top 20 opponent and not be ranked. See, look at that. I wanted to get to that. When I wrote that down, I knew I was completely frustrated, but that's the obviously the conundrum with the Pac-12. 2002 Kentucky, crazy, an SEC team. 2002 Kentucky was the other team, and they're looking for a win over a ranked opponent for the second time in 3 weeks. Like I said, beating Wisconsin, which would be huge. This would be their first season with multiple top 25 wins since 2018. This would be their first 4-0 start, not from that long ago, but 2017. They have 14 sacks this season, tied with USC for the second most in the FBS this year. And linebacker Dayan Henley had 13 tackles, 3 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles last week in their victory. And their quarterback Cam Ward, 300 pass yards and 4 passing touchdowns last week, his first 300-yard game with the Cougars, topping 311 of his 13 games last year when he transferred. He came through the transfer portal from Incarnate Word. So obviously, competition-wise, taking a step up, and Cam Ward has looked good. And even when they played in Wisconsin, watching that game, there were times, and that crowd is absolutely awesome and crazy, but he didn't look crazy rattled, looked a little rushed here and there, but that defense balled out. And when Ward needed to make plays, he did that. And when you look at what Washington State did on the road, and especially this year with head coach Jake Dicker, because he took over last year, the whole COVID vaccination mess with Washington State's former coach, and he was 3-3 when pardon me, Nick Rolovich. I know who Washington State's coach was. I should probably tell you. But yeah, Nick Rolovich was fired again for not abiding with the vaccination outline rules, I guess, regulations that state employees needed to take. So Jake Dickert takes over 3-3 in his inaugural season, and they played hard for him. They beat the Huskies last year in Seattle in the Apple Cup, which is huge, and that should endear him to fans to buy him plenty of time in the Palouse. He's a defensive guy, and you saw that obviously in Wisconsin, but just how they've been playing, and it'll be a very interesting matchup this weekend. So, by the way, their offensive coordinator is former Texas Tech offensive coordinator Eric Morris, who did happen to coach Patrick Mahomes in college. Yes, not everybody's going to become Patrick Mahomes, and you got to always put that out there. But again, things are looking really good, and we'll see what Cameron Ward can do. But so far, so good. And like I said, he threw 47 touchdowns at Incarnate Word, and he is on his way. So it's interesting though, because Oregon, again, they start 3-1, they'll climb up a little bit. It would be very interesting to me to see if Washington State does get this victory at home, and it's going to be crazy and loud up there. Like I said, even though Oregon, is 13-6 at the Palouse since '85, it'll be very interesting to me to see if they do win, like I said, where they end up in the top 25, because you have Oregon, like I said, at 15, and they've also beat Wisconsin. But if Oregon wins, again, they'll creep up a little bit. This is going to be a close game. It'll be very interesting to see what both defenses can do. And since Oregon hasn't allowed a sack yet, you have to be very encouraged with the way the offensive line is playing. So for me, that's huge. And in the trenches is always huge. But if Oregon's offensive line keeps this up and they can't really get any sustainable pressure on Ward, it could be a long day for Washington State at home. But I don't look at it that way, this game that way at all. I think there'll be some points put up, but because when the defenses are so good, usually all of a sudden it becomes an offensive shootout after the first quarter. So I think there'll be some points put up in this game, and man, it's tough to pick. If I got to lean though, I'm actually going to go with the home team in this. Again, don't go too crazy with me on these picks, but I'm going to go with the home team on this and see what happens there. So I think Washington State I pick Washington State to beat Oregon in a close one. I know our good friend, obviously Sports Arena, shameless plug, but at the sports reporter without pay, Ray Lynn, always saying to me, I got to pick one. So I gave obviously ways both teams can win in this preview. Again, defensively, they're both stout. Offensively, they've been able to, both teams have moved the ball, while Oregon outside of week one, and score. It's one of those things where I look at it, but I'm going to pick Washington State, Ray Lynn. You'll be proud. I pick Washington State. And I say they top Oregon. In this game in the Palouse. So that is where I see that game going for Washington State. The next one I'll do real quick. Again, it's been a tough start. 3-0 UCLA at Colorado. 0-3. They're up in Boulder. Again, a beautiful campus, actually. Very beautiful campus. And it's one of those things where games, like I said, for CU, again, it's just been very, very tough for Card Durrell, former UCLA player and coach. He actually did coach at UCLA for a while as well. But just it's been tough sledding. And when you look at Colorado, the interesting thing about this matchup, as we start looking at it, of Colorado, they've actually won their last three matchups at home against UCLA. And the last time they lost to the Bruins was 24, well, at home, I should say, in Boulder. The last time they lost to the Bruins, the last time the Bruins, lost to the Bruins, in Boulder was 2014. The Bruins also won in double overtime and have won 6 of their last 8 home conference. Colorado has won 6 of those 8 home conference games with 5 of the 6 wins by 6 points or less. So they make conference games close, and that'll be huge for the Buffaloes if they can keep this game close, because again, UCLA, we saw them and get to them in a second, a little bit of a struggle against South Alabama, needed a last second field goal to get the win in the Rose Bowl. They were able to get it. But yeah, if you're Colorado though, well, they did convert on 4 fourth downs last week, and it's the most in a game by a Pac-12 team this young season, and they're looking to be the first. This is one of those insane stats when I was looking at this. Looking to be the first 0-3 Pac-12 school to beat a 3-0 Pac-12 school in their conference opener since who? UCLA beat Washington State in 2019. Like I said, Carl Lorell was a wide receiver at UCLA, and from 83 to 86, and was their head coach from 03 to 07. But for the Buffs, it's going to be tough sledding. It's one of those things where it's definitely going to be tough sledding because they've struggled. And to me, that's one of the things where when you look at it, it's going to be very tough for Colorado. I see UCLA winning this game, and I think Colorado could keep it close for a half, but if you've seen the Buffs, unfortunately, it's been tough for them. They're going to have to convert on a lot of 4th downs and keep the ball away from UCLA, try to keep them out of the end zone. So, again, not the toughest of games, but now this is awesome because, like I said, once a week, we all know I'm a Sun Devil alum, but that being said, and covering ASU, once a week, then this next guest will figure this out really quick. I will be wearing different Pac-12 stuff, except for one of the Pac-12 teams will not touch. I will not wear. I will talk nice about them, but I will not wear. But I'm going to bring in Chris Cartman, a Sun Devil source, the man, the genius, knows everything there is to know about ASU, from recruiting to what these players have done, and he still educates me, although we have great conversations. So we're going to preview the ASU and Utah game. Chris, man, thanks for joining me here on my awesome Pac-12 preview here on the Sideline Sports Network. So, hey, it's a little change in Tempe. It's been a little crazy this week. Herm Edwards obviously out. Some people thought, and we've had conversations, everything going on probably should have happened before the season with everything going on with the NCAA alleged recruiting violations. But now you're taking on, Sean Aguano takes over, and they have Utah coming in first, the Pac-12 South champs from last year, Pac-12 champs from last year, and Sean Aguano gets his feet to the fire right away. I know it's pretty limited this week, obviously, at practice being around, but just your kind of overall thoughts of the direction of the program now.
Yeah, they have a lot that they're going to have to shore up, right? And it's going to happen in a really quick timeline when you have 3 ranked opponents back to back to back like they do. I really feel like Sean Aguano is going to have to inject as much excitement and energy as he possibly can into the team, get them playing hard and fast and physical. That's what he talked about. You're not going to change your scheme significantly. Maybe you can live on different plays within your playbook, and they'll probably try to do that, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But they're going to have to summon a lot more than they were able to against Eastern Michigan, because that was an embarrassment on the defensive side of the ball.
Okay, well, let's start on that side. I mean, ASU, obviously, I think all time is 15-4 against Oh, at home, all time at home against Utah, they're 15-4. Again, that is all time. But let's start there defensively, because I think being around it, but even for ASU, we coming into the season, you thought, okay, before injuries, you're like, okay, defensive line has depth. Obviously, experience at linebacker, which is huge. The secondary was going to be the new part. But how did it all fall off the wheels in your eyes against Eastern Michigan? And were they as deep as a lot thought that they were?
I think a lot of it really comes down to your preparation and your mindset. One of the things I talked about is that players reached out to me and said that after Danny Gonzalez left as defensive coordinator in 2019, there was a slow sort of disintegration of their discipline and their intensity, right? And 2020 COVID, you only play 4 games. So that's kind of, it's a little bit of a wash, hard to figure out exactly what that means. Last year, I think people saw against Utah, right? ASU was up by 14 at the half, looked like they were headed toward being the Pac-12 South champions. The winner of that game was probably going to win it. And they couldn't stop the run. They got blown off the football. They didn't understand how to handle adversity, right? They lacked a lot of intestinal fortitude, if you will. And then subsequent to that, of course, they had the horrible performance at home against Washington State that put them out of everything. 8-5 season, pretty disappointing for ASU fans, knowing how talented the team was and the state of the conference. And then a lot of this stuff in the offseason was, hey, we're headed back in a good track, and we have the senior leadership that we've wanted in place to be able to understand and learn and grow from the things that we took from last year. Michael, ultimately what it comes down to is you have to have leadership in your program that understand how to push and prod and get the most of their players. What we've seen time and time again, ASU, Dennis Erickson, now Herm Edwards, is the players' coaches. They simply are not able to extract enough in some of these areas. And so it very much seems like, you're never going to know for sure, but it very much seems like ASU just took Eastern Michigan for granted. Go in, get this win, right? It's not a game we have to worry too much about, and then we'll get into the conference play and we'll take Utah seriously. And the thing is, college football, you can lose to anybody, right? We've seen this. Texas A&M losing at home to App State, right? Lots of teams have been challenged or beaten. And then I thought that really sort of embarrassingly, ASU didn't really make any adjustments on the defensive side, getting gashed by the 5th best team maybe in Michigan to the tune of 250 yards or whatever their back had. That's just nuts. They didn't change their alignments up front. Omar Norman-Lott got knocked out of the game. He's an important defensive lineman, but they were getting double teamed and blown off the ball. They didn't go to tight fronts or change their fronts. They didn't change what they were doing with their linebackers, bringing an extra guy into the box, bringing a safety into the box and saying, hey, we're going to press you up and play man coverage, but we're going to stop this run stuff right now. They didn't do any of that. And that's ultimately coaching. And then it's also how much willpower you have as an individual person when you're going up against, man against man, and you're the more talented players, right? Let's think about that. You're the more talented players. So.
Right. And the one thing I said to you too, I know we had this conversation, I said it to a few people, like, you're looking at Eastern Michigan, but the one thing I got before the game, and I mean, to Herm's credit, he talked about it. And I know Coach Rodriguez talked about it. That offensive line averaged 6'4" and 312. Like, that's one of the top 5. Like, and you're saying anybody can beat anybody. Well, if you're going to gouge somebody, and like you said, losing Norman Lott again, but I'm with you on adjustments. I know, and I talked about that on Monday, is that they didn't make adjustments, but not even by the second half, I think by the middle of the second quarter, that big offensive line, no matter who they were rotating in, just crushed them. And again, you're right. I mean, it's not obviously it could be the 4th or 5th best directional school in Michigan, but yeah, to me, again, when you get gouged up front like that and you're not making adjustments when you've talked about it, that's tough. But when you look at this matchup, though, I mean, from Utah, obviously they had the heartbreaking loss at Florida. They come back and they, destroy Southern Utah. They win last week. But when you look at this matchup, I mean, Cam Rising took over last year for the Utes, and we've seen what he's done. What problems is that Utah offense going to cause for this ASU defense in your eyes?
Well, the biggest thing is the way that they use their tight ends, the versatility that they have with Keithy and Kincaid is unlike really anybody else in the conference. And so what they do is they force you into some mismatches because they either will make you play with your nickel defense and they'll spread you out where they use those tight ends like wide receivers, or they'll get you into some base defense where you have an extra linebacker on the field, and then they'll take you on that way, right? So what they do is they shift their formations without changing personnel to where they can get extra guys in the box who are tight ends, or they spread you out. They've done a really great job of getting in the slot when ASU's had their base personnel in, they'll get a slot receiver on a linebacker, or they have a really good job of getting linebackers having to be covered by running backs and whenever tight ends and running backs covered by linebackers. And that it's a recipe for disaster. ASU had a very bad ability to be able to handle that last year against Utah. We saw Keithy was kind of lined up anywhere that they could take advantage of a mismatch. They throw the ball to their backs out of the backfield, especially the smaller of their two guys. They have a ground and pound game, right? 240-pound running back. They'll line up. They'll blow you off the football. And so what ASU has to do in this game, Michael, is they have to be able to try to stop the run, no matter what that takes from the outset of the game, even if that requires committing to playing an extra linebacker, committing to bringing another safety down to the box. Even if that means that you have to accept that you're going to get some difficult man coverage situations. They do have these big cornerbacks where they have the ability to put a Tark Luckett on the field, a guy who hasn't played very much. Ro Torrance, if he's healthy enough to play, of course, is a big thing to watch in this game. Those are big body guys that can hang with the tight ends no matter where they get lined up on the field. But you have to take away that run. And then when you're able to do that, maybe then you can get into some different coverages that maybe will be able to give Cam Rising some challenges. We know that he's been prone to throwing interceptions and underneath coverage, zone type stuff. And you also know that you have to spy him or be very careful about his ability to get out and scramble and go get first downs with his feet. So it's extraordinarily difficult because of the versatility and the variety of things that they do and how it's really unlike anybody else in the conference.
Yeah, and they're the only team in the Pac-12 I know, but they're in the top 25 in scoring offense and scoring defense. But flip it to ASU. I mean, Emory Jones wins the job. Obviously, he came in the transfer portal from Florida. Out of practice, I mean, again, I think as it's gone on, it's gotten pretty good. I know some of the deep balls last week against Eastern Michigan were missed, but the ASU offense under Emory Jones, obviously ex-Valladay at running back. I mean, he's been a bright spot too. Daniel Nagata when he's been in there. So there's pieces there, but just what does this offense have to do, Chris? And what have you thought of Emory Jones up to this point?
Yeah, so Utah's passing defense and its secondary in particular are excellent. And what they do is they smother you by keeping everything underneath and taking away your run game. And ASU can't not have a pretty solid run game. Otherwise, they have basically no chance to win this game. So you have to establish that. The problem that's happened so far, I think, Michael, with ASU's offense, and there's a few, but the main one really is that Emory Jones has completed an average of 15 balls per game, but very few of those have been of the 5 to 10 yard variety. They got a little bit more done with that with Badger recently. But Utah is going to force you to throw everything underneath. They have a really great defensive backfield. So you have to be able to run the ball. I mean, I think you have to be able to move the pocket with Emory Jones more than they have to prevent some of that pass rush from wearing you down, which they don't have as many great pass rushers as they have in the past. I would say Utah, they lost a couple of their best guys in that regard. But they still are going to be able to get after you, and especially on that left side where Isaiah Glass or Emmett Boley are. So you got to move the pocket. You got to get the ball out of the hand of Jones and some run replacements, some quick game. and some RPO things. I think ASU needs to have probably around 15 completions that are under 15 yards in this game in order to be able to move the ball with any sort of reliability and success, coupled with the balance of Valadane and Gata. And you got to win. You got to at least play even in the trenches. If you're getting manhandled in the trenches, not really going to have much of a chance. Utah has very good physical defensive linemen, including the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, freshman Defensive Player of the Year last year as a nose tackle. So it's a huge task ahead.
Well, and I know I've said to you throughout the time that Utah's been in the conference that Kyle Whittingham obviously had a change up. You're going to recruit different players, and I know he's well respected. And there's two teams I've always said to everybody that whether they're undefeated or they haven't won a game, and I've said this to you a million times, I know, but you're going to get beat up against Utah and you're going to get beat up against Stanford in the trenches, and that's just how it's going to be. And how can you, to your point perfectly, how can you respond? And they have to do something. So instead, I like to do something different on the show. Instead of just making predictions, give me the one or two things that Utah, if they do, they'll win. And if ASU, one or two things that if they were be able to do, that they could win the game.
Well, the onus is really on ASU. They're a 14-point or whatever underdog at home, which that never happens against a team like Utah, right? So what they have to do really is they have to stop the run as much as they possibly can and make Utah have to throw the ball. Cam Rising can't be scrambling for a bunch of first downs. If they're able to do that, then they have a chance to play the type of the tenor of a game that I think works for them. And then they have to be able to run the football and get a lot of short completions. Both of those things have to happen. If they do that, and then they avoid turnovers, they avoid the special teams fiascos or miscues, and then they also avoid the catastrophic penalties, especially the ones that are like the roughing of the passer or the ones offensively that put them behind the chains, like they get a holding on a big play or something like that, which they've been prone to doing that. If they're able to do those things, then they're going to have a chance to be in the game. It's a tall task, and that's why Iguano has so much on his plate that he's dealing with right now, because in pretty much each of those areas, ASU hasn't been able to play to the level that it's needed to beat the highest quality competition in recent years. And so the opportunity is there. I think Utah's defense, especially in the front seven, is not as good as last year. So they will probably have some opportunities to move the ball. They just have to be very smart and targeted. Glenn Thomas has to do a great job as a play caller in this game. I think Iguano is going to inject some more up tempo, try to get a little more energy and propulsion with that offense. And if they're able to do that, then who knows? I'm not predicting ASU to win the game or really to even keep it to a single digit score, but I think it's absolutely within the realm of possibility.
Well, that makes my maroon and gold heart bleed, as you know, Chris, but I can't argue, obviously, with your logic because, again, let me ask you this lastly, because we brought up Sean Iguano, obviously has roots here in Arizona, won multiple championships at Chandler High School, granted, obviously the high school level. But, okay, say absolute craziness happens and somehow – and again, I'm not saying it will happen because I know you can write about it in Sun Devil Source and make fun of me, which I would take if I actually thought this. But say ASU somehow in conference play goes anywhere from 7-2 to 9-0. Would it be would it be a knee-jerk reaction to hire Coach Iguano, like as a full-time coach? I'm just saying, if it were to, I'm not saying it will, but if something like that happened, if he say he goes 7-2 in the Pac-12 play and beats one of those, either USC, Utah, or they obviously play Washington. So or say Washington, he goes 7-2 and does that. Would he be the right hire? Would that be the energy you're talking about needed to be injected? But would he be the right hire for the team?
Listen, Michael, if Sean Iguano gets this ASU team to 7-2 or better in conference play, I will climb to the top of the light tower at Sun Devil Stadium like Pat Tillman, and I will take a megaphone and I will shout to everybody to listen that Sean Aguano needs to be the head coach at ASU. Like, period. I'll write it 100 times on the chalkboard. I'll do whatever it takes to let everybody know that Sean Aguano should be the head coach if ASU goes 7-2 in conference play. Like, that is not even a doubt in my mind. I mean, that the odds of that happening are minuscule, to be, perfectly blunt about it. They got 3 ranked teams in a row that he's taken on right away, not to mention some other tough games that they have beyond that, right? You got to play at Stanford, and Oregon State's a tough team to play at home. At Washington State, that's really tough. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, that's wow. But, of course, something iconic would happen if there'd be a portrait of me or something screaming from a bullhorn.
Well, hey, if you climb the light post, then you know what, you'll at least have one other crazy Sun Devil there with you too, because I would be climbing the light. No, and like I said, it's just
you'd be hanging from the light post. You'd be dangling.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's always overreaction, and you of all people I know get this. I mean, everybody wants to freak out after one loss or like get too high after one win. So if a coach does went out, and I look at what Washington State did, obviously with Coach Dicker. I mean, he went 3-3, and they kept him on. And people would say, okay, well, it's Washington State. Well, they're 3-0 right now, and like I talked about before you got on, they had a huge win, obviously, at Camp Randall. So, but no, I mean, again, I get the question. It's kind of loaded if it's that extreme, and they hired him, but I think there would still be a faction of people saying, well, do your due diligence. Yeah, he, maybe he got lightning in a bottle, and say they start out 0-2 again next year. People will be like, well, why'd you hire him? So I know it's never a no-win situation for the schools hiring, but to me, I just, I guess I should ask you this lastly. What would be the minimum record for you in your eyes? You've been around it for obviously a long time. So the minimum record that if they were to hire him, you'd be like, all right, it's going in the right direction, and I see what they're doing.
Yeah, I don't know that I don't know if I look at it exactly like that. Okay. I feel like you have to be able to get a strong sense of what a Aguano-led program exactly looks like within some of these games, like structurally, how they handle a lot of coaching situations and whatnot. If they're 6-3, then probably they should hire him, right? But even if they're 5-4 in the conference, I think that he warrants a really serious look. Because I think that's an enormously difficult thing to be able to accomplish, based upon where they're at, 3 games in and all the challenges that he's inherited. So, but I don't necessarily put an exact number on that. I just think that we'll have to talk about it again in another 6-8 weeks.
Absolutely. Well, good. I'm glad you jumped up. We're able to jump on. Obviously, we hit this game. I got a few other games to hit. He is Chris Cartman, the publisher of Sun Devil Source for 24/7 Sports. If you want to know anything about recruiting, not even just in the state of Arizona, guys coming in, he's my encyclopedia. I tell you all the time, I give you credit anyway. It's like I don't try and steal information and copy pawn it off as my own. But it'll be interesting, especially what it does for recruiting. I know he said that, but hey, man, thanks for jumping on. I greatly appreciate it, and hopefully we can keep doing this throughout the season.
You know it. I'll be around. We'll talk later.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Chris.
See you, man.
That is Chris Cartman, Sun Devil Source for 24, or publisher of Sun Devil Source. Let me say it right, for 24/7 Sports. Also a Heisman voter. And so Chris Cartman, at Chris Cartman, Karpman on Twitter. Please follow him again for all that. All right, I'm going to take a quick little break, and then we will get to the other quite a few of the other matchups. Might have to go through them. Went a little long on that, not because it was ASU, but I got Chris as my guest, and I'm very lucky to get that. So we'll step aside, and I will be back with more previews here on Pac-12 football. All right, back here on Pac-12 football. Michael Caratino. You can hit me up on Twitter at Diablo00. Yes, it might have something to do with this. If you're just joining, hey, glad you're here with us on the Sideline Sports Network. I want to thank, obviously, JB Ellis, everybody over at Sideline Sports, and my guy, my brother. You see me with them, shameless plug, on the Sports Arena Mondays and Wednesdays here on the Sideline Sports Network, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, should say that. Yeah, I'm not waking up at 7 a.m. Well, I am up at 7 a.m., but I don't know how functional I'll be on the show. That being said, my brother Eric Wilson, obviously, for all the help getting this rolling. And, yeah, we're into conference play. So we just did ASU Utah. Chris, you can tell, leaning towards Utah to win. Look, I want Coach Iguana to get a win, so I'm going to put it out in the universe. I think ASU is able to do some of those things and have some success up front, keep the game close, and Valade hopefully can have a big day running the ball. Maybe Emory Jones from the quarterback position, even though, again, he's looking to pass. He's got a heck of an arm. I'm going to say ASU in a close one in Tempe at home gets Coach Iguana his first win. We'll see where it goes from there. Next up, though, oh, man, this next game, again, talking about number 7, USC. Yes, the hated Trojans by many go into, they're 3-0, go into also 3-0 Oregon State. And I will say this, for Oregon State to be 3-0, it is, again, a very good thing for the Beavers. And if you say, well, obviously, yeah, 3-0 is a good thing. Mike, no, really, Michael, 3-0 is a good thing. Yes, no, it's good because the teams there outside of Oregon in the Pacific Northwest, it's one of those things where look, they beat Boise State 34-17. They turn around and beat, everybody picked Fresno State. Again, Fresno State's very tough. For those of you out east that don't know, Fresno State throughout the years has always had the mentality, anybody, anywhere, anytime, and they have very good offenses throughout the years. Their coaches have grinded and done a good job. So they held on to beat Fresno State 35-32, and then they whooped up on Montana State. But, again, they are taking on USC 9:30 Eastern time. And it's on the Pac-12 network for those of you that were wondering where it's at. Yes, it's not. If you haven't seen listings for it, because USC's number 7, Oregon State's undefeated. They're playing at Oregon State. Oregon State is 3-0 for the first time since 2014, almost been a decade, and have not started 4-0 since winning their first 6 games back in 2012, which has been a decade. Yeah, the 68 points, I know I talked about it last week, was their most since 2012, 6th most in school history. 34 plus points in each of its first 3 games for the first time since 2002. They beat the Trojans 45-27 last season. Again, USC in flux. Lincoln Riley, we all know, is there now. But they did beat him 45-27 last year. Their first win at USC. How insane is this? Because I always, like, there are worthless stats like in-game stats that I always laugh about when people talk about. But this is that was their first win at USC since 1960. A lot of us weren't even born. I know I wasn't, so I'm pretty stoked about that. They've won their last 7 games at Research Stadium, which is the longest win streak. The longest since winning 8 in a row back in 2007, 2008. They're 3-1 at home against top 10 ranked they're 3-1, pardon me, at home. Let me say this right. I wrote it down right. 3-1 at home against top 10 ranked USC since 2000. So, again, USC has had some struggles up there, even when they were rolling. So, I mean, I'd say, 2000, but you go back to like 2002, 2003, 2005, like they had some issues in general up at Oregon State. And their wide receiver, Anthony Gold, had 2 reception touchdowns and a punt return for a touchdown last week. The first Pac-12 player to do that since UW's Dante Pettis, speedster. Dante Pettis was insane, but since 2017. So, when you look at Oregon State and what they've done, Jonathan Smith has done a heck of a job at Oregon State. But it's again, one of those programs in Coral Vallis. Again, if you haven't been up there for a game, I've been lucky enough to be up there. It's not a bad place. Again, tough to recruit to. And they've done a good job. I mean, even when Mike Riley was there, they've been able to do stuff and when I say do stuff, be competitive, beat some teams. Again, getting it going on a consistent level, this could go a hugely, hugely long way for Justin Smith and the Beavers, because you beat USC, 7th ranked USC, and you go to 4-0 and drop them to 3-1. And it's just an absolute mess. And of course, you'll see nationally, the Pac-12, they're just a down conference, this and that. Yeah, okay. I'm not even getting into that now. It's preview. It's not worth it. That's a Monday topic. But for Justin Smith, I mean, you look at it, the only negative in the Smith tenure is that the defensive side of the ball at times has been pseudo questionable, struggled. They fired Tim Tipser and promoted Trent Bray to defensive coordinator this season. So again, they're in a little bit of a transition, and that's been their literally Achilles. I mean, I know I just said it to you, but their defensive performance throughout the years, that's what stopped some of the consistency. And they've had some players overall on defense, but yeah, it's interesting to see what Jonathan Smith can do against this very, very tough USC team. And for the Trojans, look, they're looking to start 4-0 for the second time in the last 3 years. They've won 9 out of their last 11 conference road games. They're one of 5 FBS teams that have not committed a turnover this season. Caleb Williams has multiple passing touchdowns in all 3 games with the Trojans, and in his 9 of 11 career games, going back to when he was with Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma last year. He's the only USC quarterback since at least 1996 to have 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 passing touchdowns in the same game. They can also run the ball. Travis Dye, back-to-back games with 100-plus yards, is huge for the Trojans. That's the second time in his career doing it with Oregon, actually, because he transferred from Oregon, portal, in 2018. Tight end Malcolm Epps has had a reception TD and an interception versus Fresno State. Just a second. Yeah, I wrote that down right. I'm sorry. I was confused because I'm like, but yeah, Pac-12 player since 1996 to do both in one game. WSU's Marcus Williams in 2000 did it. But yeah, Malcolm Epps. But here's the one thing about USC for Lincoln Riley. Look, that offense, yes, has looked good. And when you look at the USC's schedule to this point, it's one of those things where you say, okay, like they opened up with Rice and they put up 66. They already had their first Pac-12 game, which they're 1-0 against Stanford, and they went to the Farm and beat Stanford 41-28. They've had battles throughout the years, but they got off to a quick start and held on 41-28. Then they turn around, like I said, Oregon State beat Fresno State by 3, but man, USC turned around and beat them 45-17 last week for Coach Riley. Here's the thing, though. The USC defense to this point, again, 3 games, even though, like I said, Rice against Stanford, we saw a little against Fresno State. Again, they got off to a fast start offensively, but it was tough for the Trojans. So their defense is kind of is the question mark. They have players in each level that can do it. But when you look at USC, it's going to depend if they get off to a fast start. How is a USC team playing from behind? Like, I know I just said it sounds contradictory because I said they can put up points. And you're like, Michael, you said they can put up points. Yes. But when you're playing from behind, especially in college football, it's different. You're on the road. You're in an environment where traditionally, like I said, since 2000, USC is pretty much – they've won there, but they've had struggles there, and they've lost games there as well. So that to me, that stuff, it's going to be what can the Oregon State revamped defense do as well? Can they at least somewhat contain, try and keep in check this explosive, insane USC offense led by Caleb Williams and, of course, new head coach Lincoln Riley, another first-year head coach. You know what? I'm going to – it's tough for me to say this, but I'm going to lean SC, but in a close one. I think it's a 3 to 7 point game, in my opinion, but I'm going to go with SC in this over Oregon State. I say in a 3 to 7 point game ish. And it could be done by a late score. I'm not talking about a last second field goal, but maybe a late touchdown puts SC up by 3 and they get it. But I'm not going to be shocked. I'm not wavering, Raylan. I'm not picking 2 teams. I wouldn't be shocked if Oregon State is able to pull it out, but I'm going to lean again. I got to lean with the Trojans in this. I think it'll be a good, like I said, I think it'll be a good game, but I lean with the Trojans. The other game we have, Washington hosts Stanford. Like I said, Washington 3-0. Stanford's coming off a bye, an early season bye, which is, kind of cool, but a bummer because they play Notre Dame later in the season. That's their third non-conference game. But for Washington, look, they're looking to start 4-0 since first time since 2017. They have also a new head coach at UW, Kalen DeBoer, who's done a phenomenal job. Where did he come from? Fresno State. And yes, Washington has done a heck of a job. Kalen DeBoer early on in the season, like I said, has done a heck of a job. When you look at their schedule, like I said, they beat Kent State, okay, beat Portland State badly, but then Michigan State at UW, 39-28. They got out to a big lead, and they end up winning by 11 against Michigan State. So again, sending another Big Ten team home packing. So again, it's going to be. I think it's going to be a close game because, like I said, Stanford's going to beat you up. They're going to be physical. They've won 5 of their last 8 meetings in Seattle, and are 5-1 against ranked Washington teams under David Shaw, who a phenomenal coach, could be at the NFL level, wants to stay at Stanford, and that's all good for him. Running back E.J. Smith is second in the Pac-12 with 103 yards per game. Is out this week, unfortunately. So that's going to be that's for Stanford. Sorry, not for Washington. E.J. Smith for Stanford. Pardon me. Yeah, I was going to say he doesn't play for Washington. Michael Penix Jr., I know I mentioned him, has 3 straight games with 300-plus yards passing, and first UW QB to do that since Cody Pickett did it in his first 7 games back in 2002. Look, this kid came from Indiana. He got banged up at the end of towards the end of his last few seasons at Indiana. If he can stay healthy, this could be pushing Washington over that hill. They could win the Pac-12 North, and they could win the Pac-12 championship. But I'm going to go with Washington in this game. I think Stanford, obviously, their physicality to keep it close. I think it's going to be like a 21-17, a 24-21 type of game up at UW in Seattle. Beautiful campus. So I am going with UW on that. So far, again, I got UW, I got SC, I have UCLA over Colorado, I have Washington State. Yeah, I took Washington State over Oregon. So let's see, Cal and the last two. So I took, we'll get to that in a second. But Arizona at Cal. Look, Arizona's offense has looked great. Arizona has looked great. They've won their last 6 meetings with Cal, with their only loss coming in 2009 in Berkeley. They're back in Berkeley. Look, I like what Coach Fish has done. It pains me to say, but he has done a very, very solid job. And it's to me, it's their offense has played very well. And I think that in both their wins, they've scored over 30 points. They did struggle against North Dakota State. They did lose to Mississippi State, but they were moving the ball. They were in that game. So, for Cal, again, they were right there against Notre Dame. I got to say, because it's in Berkeley, I go with Cal in that game. And then, that's all the games. So I went with UCLA over Colorado, Cal over Arizona, Washington State over Oregon, Cal over Arizona, USC inching out Oregon State, Washington beating Stanford, and I went with, my homer pick of the week. I went with ASU over Utah in those games. So that's that'll do it. I want to thank Chris Cartman, obviously, for coming on. Again, check it out Mondays and Fridays here on Sideline Sports. Pac-12 football. Mondays is review. Fridays is preview. I know, so simple, but hey, simple's easy. Keep it simple. The KISS theory. Keep it simple, stupid. Make it easy. But yeah, going to get out of here. Want to thank everybody for checking it out. Again, all season long here on Sideline Sports with Pac-12 football. Again, we will have more guests, just like Chris, who cover the teams and reaching out to people, setting up schedules. So it's getting there. But I want to, again, thanks for joining me here on the Sideline Sports Network. This has been Pac-12 football preview. I will see you guys on Monday. Have a phenomenal college football weekend. And hey, go Pac-12. Forks up, Devils.